The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room Captain Daniel Cole had ever seen. The dome stretched so high above him that clouds actually formed near the ceiling. Representatives from 47 different species sat in curved rows that rose up and away from the central platform where he stood alone. Some of them had scales, some had fur, some had no bodies at all and existed only as floating lights. All of them were staring at him with hatred in their eyes. Daniel kept his back straight and his hands clasped behind him. He was 43 years old, a former military officer turned diplomatic envoy, and he had faced death many times in his career, but he had never faced anything like this. The chains around his wrists were made of some metal that seemed to drink the light. The platform beneath his feet hummed with energy that he knew would kill him instantly if he tried to run. High Arbiter rose from his seat at the highest point of the chamber. He was a creature, nearly 3 meters tall, with mandibles that clicked when he spoke. His voice echoed through the dome like thunder. Captain Daniel Cole of the human vessel Horizon's Edge, you stand accused of the destruction of the civilian transport vessel Gentle Dawn. 412 citizens died in that attack. How do you answer these charges? Daniel took a breath. I am innocent. My ship did not attack the Gentle Dawn. We responded to a distress signal and found the vessel already destroyed. We were rescuing survivors when unknown attackers ambushed us and fled before we could identify them. A roar of anger swept through the chamber. Species that had never agreed on anything suddenly united in their fury against him. Daniel had expected this reaction. Humans were still newcomers to the galactic community. They had only been part of the Council for 30 years. Many species resented their rapid rise and their stubborn independence. Ambassador stood from the small human delegation section. She was 60 years old with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen 3 decades of interstellar diplomacy. She raised her hand for permission to speak. High Arbiter, I request the opportunity to present evidence in Captain Cole's defense. Clicked his mandibles. You may proceed, Ambassador. Activated a holographic display that showed sensor readings, communication logs, and weapon analysis data. Our investigation shows that the weapon signatures attributed to Captain Cole's vessel do not match standard human military systems. The energy patterns suggest the weapons were modified to appear human, while actually originating from a different source. Lies, the shout came from Counselor, a reptilian politician whose scales were dark green and whose eyes burned with rage. He stood from his seat and pointed a clawed finger at Daniel. Human lies designed to protect a murderer. My family was on that vessel, Ambassador. My sister, my nephews. Do you expect me to believe that some mysterious attackers killed them while your captain watched? The chamber erupted in shouting. Was a powerful figure in council politics. His species controlled major trade routes and military installations throughout the sector. When he spoke, others listened. Tried to continue. Counselor, I understand your grief, but the evidence clearly shows inconsistencies that must be investigated before any judgment is made. The evidence shows what humans wanted to show, turned to address the entire chamber. We all know humans are capable of manipulating data. They have done it before. They will do it again. This captain murdered innocent civilians, and his government is trying to protect him with fabricated evidence. High Arbiter raised one of his 4 arms for silence. The chamber slowly quieted. Ambassador, the Council has reviewed your evidence submission. Our analysts have determined that the data shows signs of tampering. It cannot be accepted. Daniel felt his heart sink. He had expected opposition, but not this. Someone had altered the evidence. Someone had made sure that his defense would fail. High Arbiter, he said, I request permission to speak on my own behalf. Considered this for a moment, then nodded. You may speak, Captain. Daniel turned slowly, looking at the representatives from all the different species. Some of them had been friendly to humans. Some had been hostile. Most had been indifferent. Now they all looked at him like he was something disgusting they had found on the bottom of their feet. "I have served in space for 20 years," he said. "I have fought pirates and smugglers and hostile forces from a dozen different systems. I have never attacked civilians. I have never fired on an unarmed vessel. When my ship received the distress signal from the gentle dawn, we changed course immediately to offer assistance. We found debris and escape pods. We found survivors who were dying in the cold vacuum of space. We saved 11 citizens that day, before unknown ships attacked us and forced us to retreat." "Where are these survivors?" demanded. "Why have they not?" Daniel looked at him. "They are being held by your government, counselor. They have not been allowed to communicate with anyone since they were transferred to custody." Smiled coldly. "The survivors are traumatized and confused. They remember seeing human ships. They remember the terror of watching their families die. Their testimony supports the charges against you." "I would like to hear that testimony directly," Daniel said. Announced. "The witnesses are under medical care and cannot be subjected to interrogation by the accused." Daniel understood now. The trap had been carefully constructed. Every piece of evidence that could help him had been locked away or discredited. Every witness who knew the truth had been silenced. Someone wanted him dead, and they had spent months making sure it would happen. Made one final attempt. "High Arbiter, I formally request a delay in these proceedings until a neutral investigation can be conducted." Conferred with the other arbiters for several minutes. The chamber buzzed with whispered conversations in dozens of languages. Daniel stood alone on the platform and waited. Finally, turned back to face the chamber. "The request for delay is: the preliminary evidence against Captain Daniel Cole is sufficient to proceed with formal tribunal judgment. The accused will be held in maximum security detention until final judgment is delivered in 3 cycles. Given the severity of the charges and the strength of the evidence, the council recommends execution as the appropriate sentence." The chamber exploded with noise. Some species cheered. Others simply watched in cold satisfaction. Daniel saw arguing furiously with council officials while security guards approached him from all sides. As they led him away, Daniel looked up at the observation galleries that ringed the upper levels of the dome. Thousands of spectators had come to watch his trial. Most of them were celebrating his condemnation. But in one corner, he noticed a figure standing apart from the others. She was slender and pale, with skin that seemed to glow faintly with soft blue light. She was watching him with an expression he could not read. Then the guards pushed him through the doors, and she disappeared from view. Daniel Cole had 3 days to live. Somewhere out there, he hoped, someone knew the truth. But hope was a fragile thing, and it was fading fast. The detention level beneath the grand chamber was cold and silent. Daniel Cole sat on a metal bench in a cell designed for creatures far more dangerous than any human. The walls hummed with energy barriers that would vaporize anything that touched them. Automated defense systems tracked his every movement. Armed guards patrolled the corridor outside his door every 15 minutes. He had been here for 6 hours. In that time, he had replayed the events of 3 months ago in his mind 1,000 times. The distress signal, the debris field, the screaming survivors in their damaged escape pods, the flash of weapons fire from ships that appeared out of nowhere and vanished just as quickly. His crew had done everything right. Dr. Shaw had worked without rest to save the wounded survivors. His pilots had dodged enemy fire while maintaining rescue operations. His communications officer had broadcast emergency calls on every frequency, begging for help that never came. And now he was going to die for it. The door to his cell opened with a hiss of compressed air. Daniel looked up and saw Dr. Shaw standing in the entrance. She looked exhausted. Dark circles surrounded her eyes, and her hands trembled slightly as she stepped inside. He said, "How did you get in here?" Ambassador pulled some strings. She sat down on the bench beside him. "They are holding the rest of our crew in a separate facility. We are being interrogated individually. They keep asking the same questions over and over, trying to get us to change our stories. Have they hurt anyone? Not physically, but they are wearing us down. Some of the younger crew members are starting to doubt their own memories. She paused. Daniel, I examined those survivors. I saw their injuries. The weapon burns were not consistent with human pulse weapons. I documented everything. I sent my findings to the Council Medical Board. Let me guess, Daniel said bitterly. They rejected your evidence. They said my data was corrupted during transmission. Every piece of evidence we have submitted has been dismissed or discredited. Someone is making sure we cannot defend ourselves. Daniel nodded slowly. He had suspected as much. This was not a trial. This was a performance. The verdict had been decided before he ever set foot in the grand chamber. Go back to the others, he told her. Tell them to stay strong. Tell them to keep telling the truth no matter what. If we survive this somehow, our testimony will need to be consistent. Squeezed his hand briefly, then stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. I am not giving up on you, Captain. None of us are. Then she was gone, and Daniel was alone again. 3 levels above the detention block, in one of the observation galleries that overlooked the grand chamber, stood at a window and watched the empty platform where the human had stood. She was young by her species standards, barely 30 cycles old. Her skin glowed with the soft bioluminescence that marked all, shifting between blue and pale green as her emotions changed. They were empaths. They could sense the emotional truth of any sentient being within close range. It was a gift that had kept them safe throughout galactic history. They had survived countless wars by remaining neutral, by never taking sides, by keeping their abilities secret from species that might see them as a threat. Had watched the trial from this gallery. She had felt the emotions of everyone in the chamber, the hatred of the crowds, the political calculation of the arbiters, the desperate grief of Counselor, and the absolute certainty of Captain Daniel Cole that he was innocent. She had felt lies before. Lies had a particular texture to them, a kind of sour vibration that made her stomach turn. The human had not been lying. His truth had rung through her senses like a clear bell. He had not destroyed that vessel. He had tried to save the survivors. He was going to die for something he did not do. You should not have attended the trial. Turned to see her father standing behind her. Elder was old and wise, with skin that glowed a steady amber color. He had served on the Council Advisory Board for 50 cycles. He understood galactic politics better than almost anyone. Father, he is innocent, said. I felt it, his truth was pure. Many innocents die in the course of galactic affairs. Moved to stand beside her at the window. They have survived by not involving ourselves in the conflicts of other species. We observe. We advise when asked. We do not act. But we know the truth. Should we not share it? Our testimony would be dismissed. Other species do not fully understand our abilities. They would claim we were deceived or that we had our own hidden motives. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. I know this is difficult for you. You are young. You still believe that truth and justice are the same thing. They are not. Pulled away from him. So we let an innocent man die because speaking up would be inconvenient. We let him die because saving him would put our entire species at risk. The Council does not trust humans. If we appear to take their side, we become targets ourselves. His voice was sad but firm. This is the price of survival, daughter. I wish it were otherwise. He left her alone at the window, stood there for a long time, watching the empty chamber below. The lights had dimmed as the crowds departed. Cleaning drones swept across the platform where Captain Cole had stood in chains. 3 days. The human had 3 days before he would be executed for a crime he did not commit. Made her decision. She left the gallery and took a transport pod to the Council archives. The building was quiet at this hour. Most of the staff had gone home. She used her father's access codes to enter the restricted sections where evidence from ongoing cases was stored. The files on the Gentle Dawn incident were extensive. Sensor logs, communication records, weapon analysis, survivor testimony. Began reading through everything, searching for any detail that might prove what she had felt in the chamber. Hours passed. Her eyes grew tired and her head began to ache, but she kept searching. Finally, deep in a technical report that had been marked as corrupted and therefore inadmissible, she found something. The weapon's signatures from the attack showed energy frequencies that were slightly different from standard human weapons. The difference was small, barely detectable, but it was there. Someone had modified weapons to look human, while actually being something else. The data to a secure device and slipped out of the archives. She did not know what she would do with this information yet. She only knew that she could not stand by and watch an innocent man die. The human captain had 3 days left, intended to use every hour of them. The data chip felt heavy in his pocket as she walked through the crowded corridors of station. She had not slept in nearly 2 days. The evidence she had found pointed toward something terrible, but she needed help to understand it fully. She needed someone with technical skills that she did not possess. She found him in a small repair shop on the lower levels of the station. Park was a human tech specialist who had been stranded on when the crisis began. All human ships had been impounded pending the outcome of the trial. All human citizens had been confined to designated areas, had managed to avoid detection by hiding among the station's maintenance workers. He looked up when entered his shop. He was young, maybe 25, with nervous eyes and hands that moved constantly. "You are," he said. "What do you want?" "I want to help your captain." Placed the data chip on his workbench. "I found something in the council archives, evidence that was dismissed as corrupted. I need someone who can analyze it properly." Stared at her for a long moment. "Why would you help us? Your people never get involved in anything." "Because I know he is innocent. I felt it during his trial." She pushed the chip toward him. "Will you help me or not?" Picked up the chip and plugged it into his equipment. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the data. "This is weapons analysis from the attack. The energy signatures are wrong. These readings show characteristics of military weapons, not human ones. Someone modified the weapons to appear human. It looks that way, but this modification is sophisticated. It would require access to classified human weapons data and advanced engineering capabilities." Looked up at her. "This is not something random pirates could do. This was planned by someone with serious resources." Felt her skin pulse brighter as the implications became clear. "Counselor. He claimed to lose family in the attack. He has been the loudest voice demanding the captain's execution." "You think he destroyed his own people's ship?" "I think we need to find out." They spent the next several hours digging deeper into the evidence. Was skilled at finding data that others had tried to hide. He discovered communications logs that showed unusual activity in the fleet just before the attack. He found financial records that traced large payments to mercenary groups known for their discretion and violence. The picture that emerged was horrifying. Counselor had planned the destruction of the Gentle Dawn. The family members he claimed to mourn had actually been his political rivals within his own clan. He had eliminated them and blamed the attack on humans, creating the perfect excuse to push for war against humanity. "This is enough to prove Captain Cole's innocence," said. "But how do we get it to the council? They have rejected every piece of evidence the humans have submitted." Thought about this carefully. "The council will not listen to humans. They might not listen to me either, but if the evidence comes from inside themselves, they would have to pay attention." She remembered something from her research. Commander was a military officer who had been assigned to investigate the attack. Her reports had been strangely vague, lacking the detail that would be expected from such an important case. Perhaps she knew more than she was willing to say officially. I need to find Commander, said. She may be willing to tell the truth if she understands that we already know it. Grabbed her arm as she turned to leave. Wait, this is dangerous. If discovers what you are doing, he will have you killed. He has murdered hundreds of his own people already. 1 human would mean nothing to him. Then we must be careful. Gently removed his hand. Stay hidden, keep working on the evidence. I will contact you when I know more. She found Commander in the diplomatic quarters that evening. The commander was tall for her species, with dark scales and eyes that seemed to carry a great weight of sadness. She was standing on a balcony overlooking the station's central garden when approached her. Commander, my name is. I am a researcher studying the Gentle Dawn incident. Turned to look at her. The do not involve themselves in council matters. Why are you really here? Decided to take a risk. I know what Counselor did. I know he destroyed the Gentle Dawn to eliminate his rivals and blame the humans. I know you helped cover it up. Scales shifted color slightly, a sign of stress among her species. You should not say such things. They could get you killed. An innocent man is going to be executed in 2 days for a crime he did not commit. Does that not bother you? The commander was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Of course it bothers me, but what can I do? Controls everything, the evidence, the witnesses, the council itself. If I speak against him, my family will suffer. My children will be punished for my betrayal. So you will let the human die. I have no choice. Turned away. Please leave. Forget what you think you know. It will only bring you pain. Left the diplomatic quarters feeling defeated. She had hoped that would be willing to testify, but fear had silenced her. Fear was silencing everyone. She returned to her family's quarters to find her father waiting for her. Elder stood in the center of the room, his skin glowing a deep orange color that indicated anger. I know what you have been doing, he said. You accessed the archives using my codes. You have been meeting with humans. You have been investigating Counselor. Father, I found proof. The human captain is innocent, orchestrated the entire attack. I know. His voice was heavy with resignation. I have known since the beginning. Many of us on the advisory board suspected the truth, but we chose to remain silent. Stared at him in disbelief. You knew, and you did nothing. Exposing would destabilize the entire council. It would lead to war between thee and their rivals. Millions could die. Sometimes the death of one innocent person is preferable to the chaos that truth would bring. That is not justice, Father. That is cowardice. Flinched as if she had struck him. I am trying to protect our people. I am trying to protect you. Walked past him toward her room. At the door, she stopped and looked back at him. The human captain has done nothing wrong except try to save lives. If we let him die to preserve our comfort, then we do not deserve to call ourselves civilized. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, breathing hard. 2 days remained. The evidence existed, but no one would present it. The truth was known, but no one would speak it. Thought about the human standing alone on that platform, facing execution for heroism. She thought about what it meant to have the power to save someone and choosing not to use it. She would not let him die. Whatever it cost her, whatever the consequences, she would find a way to make the council hear the truth. Even if she had to scream it. The grand chamber was full again. Representatives from every species in the council had gathered to witness the final judgment of Captain Daniel Cole. The observation galleries overflowed with spectators who had traveled from distant worlds just to see a human executed. News drones hovered everywhere, broadcasting the event across the galaxy. Daniel stood on the central platform for the last time. He had been allowed to wash and dress in his formal uniform. The chains around his wrists had been replaced with energy restraints that glowed faintly blue. He stood straight and kept his expression calm, determined to face death with dignity. High Arbiter rose from his seat and clicked his mandibles for silence. The chamber gradually quieted. We are gathered to deliver final judgment in the case of Captain Daniel Cole, accused of the destruction of the vessel Gentle Dawn and the murder of 412 citizens. Pause to let the weight of his words settle over the crowd. The evidence has been reviewed. The testimony has been heard. Does anyone wish to speak before judgment is pronounced? Ambassador stood. High Arbiter, I wish to enter a final plea for mercy on behalf of the human delegation. You may speak, Ambassador. Faced the chamber with fierce determination. Captain Cole has served humanity with honor for 20 years. He has saved countless lives, including the lives of non-human species during emergency rescue operations. He responded to the Gentle Dawn distress signal because that is what humans do. We help those in need. We do not abandon people to die in the darkness of space. The evidence shows otherwise, Counselor interrupted. His scales seemed darker today, almost black, and his eyes gleamed with satisfaction. The evidence shows that humans are savage creatures who destroy what they cannot control. This captain murdered innocent civilians, and no amount of pretty speeches will change that fact. The evidence was manipulated, shouted. Every piece of proof we submitted was rejected or discredited. This trial has been compromised from the beginning. Enough, said firmly. Ambassador, you have made your position clear. The Council has considered all arguments. Unless there is new evidence to present, we will proceed with judgment. Sat down slowly, her shoulders slumped in defeat. She had done everything possible. It had not been enough. Turned to face the chamber. By unanimous vote of the Council Tribunal, Captain Daniel Cole is found guilty of mass murder. The sentence is death by molecular dissolution, to be carried out immediately following this judgment. The chamber erupted in cheers and applause. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, accepting the reality of his situation. He would die here, far from Earth, for a crime he did not commit. He only hoped that someday the truth would come out, even if he would not be alive to see it. Wait! The scream cut through the noise like a blade. Everyone turned toward the source of the sound. A young woman was pushing through the crowd in the observation gallery, her skin blazing with brilliant blue light. Guards moved to stop her, but she ducked past them with surprising agility. Reached the railing of the gallery and vaulted over it, dropping 3 meters to the chamber floor below. She landed hard but scrambled to her feet immediately and ran toward the central platform. Stop her, Counselor shouted. She is interfering with council proceedings. Guards converged on her from all directions. Knew she had only seconds before they reached her. She had to act now or never. She reached the edge of the platform and looked up at Daniel Cole. Their eyes met. She felt his confusion, his surprise, and beneath it all, his faint, desperate hope. I am sorry, she whispered. This will hurt. Then she opened her mouth and released the resonant scream. They had developed this ability over millions of years of evolution. It was their most sacred and most dangerous gift. The scream allowed them to project emotional truth directly into the minds of everyone within range. It was exhausting and painful, and sometimes fatal to the one who used it. They had laws against using it without consent. Those laws carried a penalty of permanent exile. Did not care about the laws anymore. The scream erupted from her throat and spread through the chamber like a wave of pure light. Every being present felt it wash over them. They felt the absolute certainty of Daniel Cole's innocence. They felt his confusion when he arrived at the debris field. They felt his desperate determination to save the survivors. They felt his horror when the unknown ships attacked and his anguish when he was forced to retreat. But the scream did not stop there. Had spent days gathering evidence and feeling the emotions of everyone connected to this case. She had touched Commander's guilt and shame. She had sensed the dark satisfaction that felt whenever the trial was mentioned. All of these impressions had been stored in her memory, and now she released them all. The chamber experienced flashes of the truth. The secret meetings where planned the destruction of his rivals. the modified weapons designed to frame the humans, the survivors being drugged and coached to give false testimony, the evidence being altered and legitimate data being marked as corrupted. The scream lasted only 12 seconds, but it felt like hours. When finally stopped, her voice gave out completely. Her skin flickered between colors too fast to follow and then went completely dark. She collapsed on the platform, unconscious from the strain. Chaos erupted everywhere. Several officers rushed toward, their hands reaching for weapons. But Daniel Cole moved faster. He broke through his energy restraints with a surge of strength he did not know he possessed. He threw himself over her unconscious body, shielding her with his own. "You will not touch her," he shouted. "She just saved everyone in this chamber from making a terrible mistake. If you want to hurt her, you go through me first." The officers hesitated. The chamber was in complete disarray. Representatives were shouting at each other, demanding explanations, accusing each other of being involved in the conspiracy. High Arbiter was clicking his mandibles frantically, trying to restore order. Counselor pushed through the crowd toward the platform. His face was twisted with rage. "This is a trick. Empathy is unreliable. She projected lies into your minds." "She projected truth," said a voice from the delegation. Elder stepped forward, his skin glowing with steady white light. "I felt it. We all felt it. The resonant scream cannot transmit lies. It can only project genuine emotional experiences. What we witnessed was the truth." "You dare to accuse me," snarled. "I lost my family in that attack." "You murdered your family in that attack," replied calmly. "You eliminated your political rivals and blamed innocent humans to start a war that would increase your power. We all felt your satisfaction. We all felt your guilt." More voices joined in, demanding investigation, demanding answers. The delegation fractured as officers and officials turned on each other, each one trying to distance themselves from the conspiracy. On the platform, Daniel Cole held his unconscious body and watched the chamber descend into chaos. She had done it. This young woman from a species he had never met had risked everything to save him. She had broken her people's most sacred laws. She had nearly killed herself with the effort. And she had succeeded. Guards finally reached the platform, but they were no longer interested in executing Daniel. They were there to protect him, and from the growing violence around them. Counselor was screaming orders that no one was following. Commander was being detained by council security officers. The truth was finally out. Whatever happened next, Daniel Cole knew one thing for certain. He owed his life to a stranger who had looked at injustice and refused to accept it. He held her closer and waited for the chaos to end. 3 weeks had passed since the day screamed the truth into the minds of the Galactic Council. In that time, everything had changed. The investigation that followed had been swift and thorough. Commander, faced with the undeniable evidence of her own guilt, had chosen to cooperate fully with Council investigators. She provided testimony, documents, and recordings that confirmed every detail of the conspiracy. She explained how Counselor had recruited her with promises of promotion and threats against her family. She described the planning sessions where they had discussed how to modify weapons to look human. She revealed the locations of the drugged survivors who had been coached to give false testimony. Counselor had attempted to flee station in the chaos following the trial. He had made it as far as the outer docking ring before his own people caught him. The government, horrified by the scope of his crimes, had immediately disowned him. He was now being held in a maximum security facility, awaiting trial for the murder of 412 of his own citizens. Captain Daniel Cole had been formally exonerated on the third day. High Arbiter had personally apologized on behalf of the entire council. Ambassador had negotiated not just his release, but new protections for human vessels traveling through council space. The incident had actually improved humanity's standing among many species who admired their response to false accusations. But none of that mattered to Daniel as he walked through the corridors of the council medical facility. He had only one person he wanted to see. Lay in a recovery bed surrounded by monitoring equipment. Her skin still flickered with unsteady light, shifting between pale blue and gray. The doctors said she had nearly died from the strain of the resonant scream. Her empathic abilities might never fully recover. She had sacrificed a part of herself to save a stranger from another world. She opened her eyes as Daniel entered the room. Her voice was weak and rough from damage to her throat. "Captain Cole, I was wondering when you would visit." "I came as soon as they let me." He pulled a chair close to her bed and sat down. "How are you feeling?" "Tired, empty, like someone scooped out my insides and forgot to put them back." She managed a faint smile. "But alive, that is more than I expected." Daniel shook his head slowly. "Why did you do it? You did not know me. You had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Your people's laws, your health, your future. Why risk all of that for a human you had never met?" Was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. "When I watched your trial, I felt your innocence. I felt how certain you were that you had done the right thing. And I felt how everyone in that chamber had already decided to let you die for something you did not do." She paused to catch her breath. "I could have walked away. My father wanted me to. My entire species has survived for thousands of years by walking away from injustice. But I kept thinking about you standing there alone, facing death for trying to save lives. And I realized that if I could feel truth and chose to ignore it, then what good was my gift? What good was my existence?" Daniel reached out and gently took her hand. Her skin was cool against his palm. "You saved my life. I do not know how to repay that." "You do not need to repay it. Just do what you were always going to do. Keep helping people. Keep responding to distress signals. Keep being the kind of human that makes other species wonder if maybe they judged your people too harshly." The door opened, an elder entered. He looked older than he had 3 weeks ago, as if the weight of recent events had aged him considerably. He nodded respectfully to Daniel before moving to stand beside his daughter's bed. "The Council Advisory Board met this morning," he said. "They discussed what to do about your violation of our laws." Skin flickered with anxiety, "And they have decided that no punishment is warranted. What you did exposed a dangerous conspiracy and prevented a potential war between multiple species. The board has formally recognized your actions as a service to galactic peace." Paused, and something like pride crept into his voice. "They are calling you a hero, daughter. Young across the station are asking about you. They want to know how you found the courage to act when everyone else was silent." "What do you tell them?" asked. Looked at Daniel, then back at his daughter. "I tell them that you learned it from watching humans. I tell them that sometimes neutrality is just another word for cowardice, and that your mother would have been proud of the woman you have become." Tears welled in his eyes, bent down and kissed her forehead gently, then straightened and turned to leave. At the door, he paused and looked back at Daniel. "Take care of yourself, Captain, and take care of my daughter if your paths ever cross again. She is the best of us." Then he was gone. 2 days later, Daniel Cole stood on the observation deck of a human transport vessel preparing to depart station. His crew had been released and reunited with him. Dr. Shaw had been honored by the Council Medical Board for her accurate documentation of the survivors' injuries. Park had been offered a position with the Human Diplomatic Corps for his help in uncovering the conspiracy. Everyone was going home. Daniel watched the station grow smaller through the viewport. Somewhere down there was still recovering. The doctors said she would be released within a week. Her empathic abilities would probably return to about 70% of their former strength. She would carry the scars of what she had done for the rest of her life. But she would carry them proudly. "Captain," Ambassador approached him from behind. "Your report is ready for transmission to Earth Command. Would you like to review it before I send it?" "What does it say?" "Everything. The conspiracy, the trial, the resonant scream. and my recommendation that humanity actively seek stronger alliances with species like the... She smiled slightly. I also included a suggestion that we establish a cultural exchange program. I think our people could learn a lot from each other. Daniel nodded. Send it, and add a personal note from me. Tell them that when historians look back on this incident, I want them to remember one name above all others. The young woman who refused to let an innocent man die because silence was easier than truth. On station, in a medical facility that overlooked the central garden, stood at a window for the first time since her collapse. Her skin glowed with steady blue light again, not as bright as before, but stable. A group of young aliens from various species had gathered outside her room, waiting for a chance to speak with her. A nurse approached her with concern. "Miss, you should rest. Those visitors can come back another time." Watched the human vessel disappear into the distance, becoming just another point of light among the stars. "No, let them in. If they came to ask questions, I should answer them." The young aliens filed in nervously. There were in species that had never seen before. They looked at her with a mixture of awe and curiosity. One of them, a small creature with bright green fur, spoke first. "Is it true that you your entire species to save a human? Why would you do that?" Considered the question carefully. Because I could feel that he was innocent, and because staying silent when you know the truth is just another kind of lie. She looked around at all their young faces. The galaxy is full of species that have decided to survive by not caring about anyone but themselves. But sometimes one person can change everything. Sometimes one voice can make a difference. The humans understand that better than most. I learned it from watching them. Outside the window, the stars burned bright and constant. Somewhere among them, Daniel Cole was traveling home. And somewhere in this room, young minds were beginning to understand that courage was not the absence of fear. It was the choice to act despite it. Smiled and began to tell her story from the beginning. There was much work to be done, and it would start here with these young people in this room. The galaxy was changing. It was a new dawn for everyone.